Hello, everyone. This is Anna McGovern, and today I am joined by Rupert Lowe, who is an MP for Reform UK. How are you doing today, Rupert?
I'm very good, Anna. I'm delighted to be on your podcast.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for having, bringing the time to have a chat today. And we've got some questions that people have been asking and particularly interested in your career as an MP. So, firstly, we'll just start this by talking a bit about your journey, about how you actually became a Reform MP.
Well, it all started a long time ago. So my first sort of interest, because prior to that, I worked in the city. I'm passionate about farming. I have a farm, lucky enough to have a farm, which I've managed to acquire over the years.
Mhm.
And I became vexed about the Maastricht Treaty, which was a treaty which basically we signed. And I don't think a lot of the MPs then had read the treaty because it was a very dysfunctional treaty. So it
Mm.
started with that. That's what piqued my interest. And then I became very fixated about giving away our currency when the three main parties wanted to sign up for the euro. So I stood for Sir James Goldsmith's party called the Referendum Party in 1997, where I kept my deposit with 6.6% of the vote. Then
Mhm.
I did a lot for Business for Sterling. Again, we saved the pound because the three main parties promised a referendum, and we did in the end have one, and the British people gave their verdict. So I did a lot, as I say, for Business for Sterling, a huge amount for Vote Leave, and then we won that referendum. And I think, had we lost it, I would have accepted the majority's view.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, the people who lost it didn't accept the outcome, and a lot of the people who didn't accept the outcome were people in either government, the civil service, the legal profession, the judges. All of our sort of establishment were basically wedded to being part of this protectionist, sort of unelected post-war socialist plan that's called the European Union. So when that didn't happen after the democratic vote, I did a lot then, stood for the Brexit party. I got increasingly distressed about Theresa May. And I emailed Nigel. He'd set up the Brexit party. So I stood for the Brexit party in the West Midlands, and I was elected as an MEP where I spent months. We got a sort of Brexit, which Boris did a deal on, which I think was very deficient. Our establishment, again, he was fighting them. They didn't want Brexit. My view is we held all the cards and we should have been much more robust, but we weren't, and we ended up with the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is now morphed into the Windsor Agreement, which is again dividing what I call the United Kingdom. So I carried on, and one thing led to another, and the Brexit Party became the Reform Party. I stood in a by-election in Kingswood in February last year, so almost just about a year ago, and we got 10.4% of the vote, and then which was a constituency in South Gloucestershire, just south of Bristol, which is it's a left-leaning suburb of Bristol, really.
Mm.
And so we did well there. And then I decided that I had to go east to find real people. And I went to Great Yarmouth, who in May last year had never heard of me. I basically funded and fought my own campaign in both Kingswood and Great Yarmouth. And I think I've built an affinity now with the people in Great Yarmouth. They're fantastic people. They've still got a community. And I'm doing my best to represent them as a constituency. But I think, as I explained to them, I can't really help them till I can change Westminster. So the big job is to sort Westminster out. It's completely dysfunctional. And you can see that we found by asking lots of questions, which we're allowed 20 parliamentary questions as an MP a day, which we do ask. So I think we've asked over 800 questions now. So the answers we're getting make us even more concerned about what's going on.
Mhm.
So I think government has lost sight of the fact that the people are the master, government is the servant, and it should be serving the interests of the people of Britain who pay their taxes, abide by an increasingly complex law book, pay tax under an increasingly complex tax guide, 21,000 pages long. Hong Kong's is about 500, and are increasingly over-regulated and put upon by a nanny state, which is failing all of us, and particularly failing the young generation that you represent, which I think is it's in your interests are being damaged by this central planning, which, as we all know, destroyed the communists. So I think you've got to start taking action. As I say to everybody, there are a limited number of us in Parliament working for the Reform Party trying to change things. I think it's incumbent on everybody of all ages to start standing up and challenging local government, challenging national government, and telling them that their job is to look after your interests, not serve themselves, not serve people who have never lived here and who've come here illegally, and to put the interests of the British people at the top of the agenda.
No, I completely agree. And I think as well, the work that you do publicly online, I think people on both sides can respect, regardless of political opinion, how incredibly hard you work. I see it as well on social media, like even on weekends, you're constantly posting research, you're writing to people, raising awareness on certain issues, which I think a lot of people have respect for. And that's personally how I first heard about you as well. And I guess my question is, firstly, how do you find the time to do all of that, especially if you have other commitments as an MP? And why are we not seeing that same standard from other MPs representing their constituents as well?
Well, first of all, it's not just me. I've got an extremely effective team around me. So I think, as I say, it would be impossible. Charles Atlas held the world up, but he couldn't hold the world up forever. So I've got a great team around me. I think we've got a blend of, sorry, I'll just get rid of that. I think we've got a blend of people who all share the same views, all share the same objectives. We're a blend of old, in my case. I mean, I'm 67 now. And then I've got a team of much younger people around me who I'm fortunate that they share my vision and my view. And I think they are very proficient in social media. So we do it as a team. You can't do it. Somebody has to be at the front. Somebody has to be supporting. And I think, in answer to your question, why aren't other MPs doing it? I think they're probably not in Parliament for the same reasons I'm in Parliament. I don't need to be in Parliament. As you probably know, I'm fortunate enough, I give my parliamentary salary to charity each month. Mainly to Great Yarmouth charities, although the last one we did give to a Maggie Oliver charity involved in the Pakistani rape gangs, which was outside my constituency. But the majority of it's gone to the constituency. Labour have made it very easy because they've attacked the farmers, so we gave it to a farming charity. Then they attacked small businesses, we gave it to a small business charity. Then education, so we gave it to an education charity. Then they attacked the pensions, so we gave it to a pension charity. We're just waiting for them to attack their own support base with something else, and we'll concentrate on trying to help in our own small way with that. But I think I'm driven by wanting to change the way we're governed, and I'm not sure a lot of the people in Parliament are necessarily driven by that. I think they're driven by their career, they're driven by status, they're driven by many different things. And one of the things they don't want to do is rock the boat. And I'm afraid in order to change things, you do have to be prepared to rock the boat. And that sometimes makes you unpopular. And I'm not sure that in modern Britain, where we've got so many young people who are basically being paid not to work, who aren't participating in our society, who aren't given the opportunity I think that they should be given, who aren't encouraged to effectively show self-reliance and some form of sort of initiative. People have got used to basically sitting there and enjoying soaking up the parliamentary sort of atmosphere. And I think they've lost sight of what they're elected for. They're elected to represent their constituency. And that used to be a case of somebody, who effectively had some experience of life, who was able to have a debate in Parliament and effectively end up reaching conclusions that actually make sense for the British public and representing different parts of the country, whether that's a fishing vote or an agricultural vote or an industrial vote or whatever, a shipbuilding vote. It didn't really matter, but it was a collection of people who were dedicated to doing that. But we've increasingly become what I call the uni party, which is the Tories and Labour. We've got a sort of flavour of Lib Dem, but I can't really take them that seriously. But the uni party, it's almost, as George Galloway says, two cheeks of the same backside, and that's why I think we need change. The key for us now is to make sure that we don't win the election, which I think we will, and then not be ready for government. And that's a huge job that we've still got to do.
I didn't actually know that you donated your salary to your constituency and to charities, because when I see on social media, you have so much support, but then you also have these politicians, commentators leveling these awful accusations, calling you a racist, this hateful person. How could you say such things? I don't necessarily see them doing actions such as that. And then you've got Keir Starmer as well, who will brand Reform as this dangerous, right-wing party and condemning Reform. Do you think that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are starting to become scared about the momentum that Reform is building in the UK?
Well, he should be, because we're going to eviscerate Labour at the next election. They're going to lose all the coastal seats. They're going to lose probably most of the red wall seats. And I think, the British people are very slow to react. They're very decent people. But when they do react, and it happens once in 100 years, the world flips 360 degrees and they vote for somebody different. And I think that's what's going to happen. And the truth is, Anna, that the Labour Party are incompetent. Their front bench, 26 of them, have absolutely no experience of business or real life. Most of them have sort of clambered their way up the greasy pole in politics. They pass these laws and these rules and these regulations which make them feel good about themselves, but they have absolutely no knowledge of the practical impact that it has on people's everyday lives. And the problem we've got is we've got too much legislation, and what we don't do is let people find their own level. So we're definitely not racist. We are pro the nation state. We're pro the British people, but pro the United Kingdom. We're pro cooperating nation states. At the end of the day, we I think represent decent people and decency, and to call us racist is just bonkers. I think the basis of what we believe in is merit. We don't believe in picking people for quotas, whether that's quotas for sex or color or race or religion or whatever. We believe if you're going to pick somebody for a job, you pick them on merit. It doesn't really matter. The rest of the stuff is irrelevant. If you don't pick on merit, you end up undermining your own economy and the logic of the way in which your country operates. So, I think the government's job should be to protect, as I say, our borders, to ensure that we don't have illegal people coming here, settling across our country in hotels which are paid for by people who are working their backsides off throughout the country. We should be fostering enterprise, fostering individualism, as I say, fostering self-reliance, and helping people to flourish, but looking after the people who are paying into society. I don't know about you, but I see a country which rewards indolence. It takes money off people who are, if you like, able and show initiative and take risk, and it gives it to people who either don't deserve it or don't work for it or are working the system or and the system's increasingly easy to work. I mean, we don't need to go into all the various things that are wrong, but increasingly, as we ask our questions, we're finding the DWP, the Department for Work and Pensions, hands money out like confetti. And then the other side of the equation, you've got HMRC shutting down people and taxing them into oblivion and effectively giving them no reason to employ other people. And as a result of that, you've got Rachel Reeves putting up taxes with one hand, paying it to the public sector with the other. They just don't understand the way in which the world works. And it's time now we put the interests of the British people at the top of the agenda and we looked after our own citizens. That's what we should be doing.
Just moving along to a new story that broke today, actually, about Labour MP Mike Amesbury, who has been jailed for 10 weeks for punching a constituent and taunting him by saying, "You won't threaten your MP again, will you?"
So yes, he did, and there will be a by-election there, I think, now. So again, that's a constituency that Reform can win.
And I think as well, an interesting comparison is looking at Lucy Colony, who posted a nasty tweet on X, deleted the tweet, and she's been jailed for 2 years and 7 months. Yet an elected MP there to represent his constituents and physically assaulting a constituent while taunting him only gets 10 weeks in prison. So I just wanted to ask you your thoughts on that and what you think that says about the justice system we have.
Well, the justice system is broken. You probably know that Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Mandelson Campbell, and a man called Derry Irvine, they undermined our legal system and introduced the Supreme Court, as well as undermining the sovereignty of Parliament. And increasingly, our judges are out of touch with the British people. And I think you're quite right. The dual standards that we see with regard to the legal system, and you just outlined one, are completely wrong. I mean, personally, I think the foundation of our constitution is and should be free speech, and people should be able to say whatever they want, and that is their right. And if people get offended by that, then tough. So but I think what we're seeing is arguably, and we're highlighting it, post-war, I think the plan was to create a sort of Europe without borders, without any form of nationalism, and with a sort of multicultural society. And the question I think one's got to ask oneself is the establishment now concerned that multiculturalism has failed? Because as you know, we talk about communities now living in this country who aren't integrating, who don't speak English, who don't make any effort to integrate. And I think some immigration is a good thing. If it's targeted and you're bringing in skilled people who are benefiting your economy, that's good news. If you bring in mass unskilled people who have a different view of life, who look at things in an entirely different way, and who don't want to integrate, who don't want to abide by our rules, our laws, our regulations, and don't want to speak our language, then I think you're building up a huge problem for yourself. And I think we're seeing the first plumes of smoke, if you like, bubbling up from the volcano. And therefore, I think there's an overreaction in what has happened as a result of the response to these Southport killings. But I think it's an overreaction based on fear and worry. And it's the same. I think Labour should rightly be fearing and worrying about reform, because we are going to eviscerate them, as I said. And what you're seeing, I think, is the same reaction. And I feel very sorry for those people who, you know, in the strength of feeling at the moment, have posted something, deleted it, and then been sent to prison for quite long periods of time. So I mean, we should be a society that has free speech, that respects free speech. It's, after all, in our 1689 Bill of Rights. And, you know, that should be at the top of our agenda.
If we're looking at the last general election, so 79% of 18 to 24-year-olds, which is my age group, were recorded to have supported progressive left-wing parties and voted for them in the election. So you're a Reform MP. What message would you give to young people who may be considering voting for Reform at the next general election? And what specifically does Reform offer to young people like myself?
Well, Anna, I think it's a very good question. And what you have to, I think, understand is that you, like a lot of young people, have come through an education system which has been undermined by malign influences who have probably not necessarily taught you as they should have taught you. So I think our curriculum should put what we've done as a nation at the top of the agenda, not be ashamed of it. And often that's not the case now. As you know, the educational establishment is biased to the left. And therefore, I think gradually it has become a malign influence on our young people. In the same way that I would urge people with regard to climate change, I know that's again a big sort of a forest in which these people can hide, in that, having studied geology myself, I know the world has heated up and cooled down way before man was even thought of, largely on the back of volcanic activity, which tends to be what creates global warming or global cooling. Or indeed the sun, sunspots, our proximity to the sun is far more powerful. Now, that doesn't mean to say man should pollute, but I think it's become a fixation, and it's also become a very useful tool for governments to tax people. Because I can't disprove climate change and nobody else can prove it. So it's a perfect place for people who want to virtue signal and create this sort of global movement to hide. And increasingly, I think young people have been brainwashed. So I would urge them, study a bit of geology, look at the tree rings, look at the cycles, look at geology, look at the way in which the world has heated up and cooled down before man was even thought of. And yes, don't pollute the oceans with plastic. But then again, you've got populous countries like India, China, Indonesia. You know, they're still mining and building railway lines and burning coal. They're still, you know, industrializing. They don't really care about climate change. And why, therefore, would you want to undermine Britain's rational and decent influence by undermining our economy and basically detracting from our ability to influence the way in which those more populous countries think? So I think we've got to say to young people, do your own research, do your own reading, and make your own minds up. Do not listen to a malign education system which has probably not taught you your history properly. It probably has tried to persuade you of things that aren't true. And I think you need to do what you believe in, not what other people believe in. So have a look at it yourselves and make your own minds up. But I'm all in favor of, as I say, free speech, free debate, and that way you get at the truth. So I think we encourage that. We're not far right. We're just common sense people. You know, I've worked in business all my life. We have family businesses. We've employed people for years. It's not in our interest to treat people badly. But you tend to find it's not the private sector that treats people badly. It tends to be statism that treats them badly. It tends to be the communism that, you know, which turns people into liars and cheats because the state effectively bullies them and it treats them badly. So individualism will always be a better way to live than collectivism. So I would urge people, try and live an individualistic life. Don't let the collective bully you. And that would be my advice to young people. And if you agree with us, vote Reform. I actually think, and we're seeing a lot of Gen Zs. I think you're a Gen Z if you're from the age. So a lot of Gen Zs are now coming over to Reform. And as I think I said to you earlier, my sympathies are with young people. I think too much of the money is locked up in the baby boomers. They live in the best streets. They have the best houses. They have the biggest pensions. And I don't think enough opportunity is flowing down to young people like yourself. That doesn't mean to say I support a sort of a rabid dose of socialism, but I think I do support deregulation and a big dose of individualism, and repeal of a lot of malign legislation and regulation, which is holding everybody back.
So that's Rupert Lowe, a Member of Parliament for Great Yarmouth. Thank you so much for joining me in this discussion today.
Anna, it's been an absolute pleasure.